Good to go? Okay. All right, well, my name is LaMarr Baucom. I'm the wireless network engineer here at Murray State. John wanted me to come up and just give you guys just a summary of the wireless here at Murray State and give you guys the opportunity to ask some questions. And maybe if the guys online have some questions, they can email me or email John, and we can work that out. Is that thing supposed to be moving with me? Oh, okay, it still has me. Okay, so I don't have much. Can y'all see that? Can we hit the light? Just want to talk about some of the issues and some of the things that I see. For example, planning for new construction. When we have new buildings, they basically come to us in network services and ask us what kind of telecommunication gear they need. You know, as far as switches, as far as servers, that sort of thing. And what I deal with mainly is the wireless. So they'll give us the blueprints. For instance, the new Paducah campus is being built. It's supposed to open up within the next month. And so they'll give us blueprints with a drop count, how many drops they have, and I'll kind of look at it and see where the major areas are, like the conference rooms or the auditorium, some of the places that may need additional coverages versus basically just the classrooms. And so that's one of the main things I do. Also, along with new constructions is renovation projects. We have quite a few of those, like Hester. Do any of y'all stay in the dorms? Okay, nobody stays in the dorms. Hester College is currently being renovated. So when Hester didn't have the wireless that it needed, so it gave us the opportunity to not only upgrade the wireless, but also increase for coverage and capacity, which brings me into my next point, capacity versus coverage. When I started at the university, we had I started 5 years ago in 2008. We probably had 230 access points. Not very many, and it was more of a luxury than a requirement. Since that time, you know, everyone wants to use wireless. All y'all have wireless devices. Most of y'all have them in here. We have more than one, and so it's become a requirement. And right now, from 5 years ago, where we had 230 access points, we have probably 760 access points now. And then within the next month and a half, before January 2014, we'll add another 144 in College Courts, and I'll explain that because we're going to use a different model there. We'll be adding 32 in Hester when it comes back online. So next year, we'll have upwards of 950 access points on campus. It's a big change from a few years ago. My biggest issue, I would say, is budget. Everybody wants wireless, but no one wants to pay for it. And you know, Murray State has decentralized IT staff around campus. We have information systems, but there are other departments that have their individual techs. And they have a budget for those techs, but they don't have a budget for the infrastructure equipment. So it's always a challenge to figure out who's going to pay for this equipment. Back when wireless was a luxury, the departments didn't mind spending, okay, yes, we want an access point, we'll give the money for that. But since it's become a requirement, it's a little bit more money because we need more access points. I think one of the things they fail to realize is the amount of clients we have on the access points, and that's one of the things that I have to share with some of the deans is the amount of clients we have on the access points in the particular building. One of the buildings that comes to mind is Waterfield. Waterfield is probably the busiest building, and it's kind of hard to design because a lot of it is very open. But also they have a lot of clients. And I'm going to log into, and we're going to take a look at some of the access points in Waterfield. So let's log into one of my management solutions.
Good, we've got the keystroke logger running.
So this is showing some of the, I'm sorry. For for example, it is 9:45, and in Waterfield there are currently 266 connected clients at 9:45 in the morning. So the library is not that big, and there's a lot of open area, but because of the amount of clients, I have to put a lot of APs in there. So what I do, and we'll take the second floor, or the main floor that you walk into, I put a lot of APs, but I turn the power way down, and kind of trying to isolate the areas. So this is a map of the main area of Waterfield with the access points.
More about how many users do you figure per AP?
And that's another thing. We're currently in the process of upgrading all our access points from these old two models, the 1131 series and the 1242. This is what we used to use just about everywhere on campus. Cisco has since stopped supporting these; they're end of life, and so we're having to replace these. Cisco had a hard set cap of 25 clients per access point or per radio. The newer access points that we're using can support upwards of 100 on the basic model, and the more advanced models 200. And so I'm going to pass these around so you can take a look at them. So if we look at some of the access points, this is the one over there by the dining area where food services is in Waterfield. So if we click on this access point, we can see there's 25 associated clients. On the AN, there's only one. Wow. On the BG end, there's 24. So let's see what we can figure out here. Let's click on and see. One of the benefits of us switching to MSU student and MSU employee is those are 802.1x networks, and it allows me on my management for it to pass the username and password. Where on MSU Wireless it was an open system and it wasn't able to see that. So I can also see who's connected here. So let's see.
You guys know what 802.1x is? Do you guys know what 802.1x is? It is. Do you want to explain? You want me to?
Go ahead.
Simply put, it's an authentication system that passes off to. Senior moment. What's the name of the server?
Server?
Yeah, what's the name of the 1X? It passes off to our AD. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it passes off to Aruba ClearPass first as a Radius proxy, and then it does a query off our Active Directory.
Radius was the word I was senior momenting out. But X, in other words, credentials can pass across that and put that information in the wireless system where you wouldn't have had it before. It just passes the credentials across. So you don't have to run separate wireless credentials.
So you see, what this has done is, like I said before, with MSU Wireless, we weren't able to get those usernames because it was just an open captive web portal. But I can enter in my third-party ID, and it'll pull up a client. So it sees that I have logged in with 3 different devices. And it will show me what access point I'm connected to, what SSID I'm connected to, and as long as all my maps are updated, it will triangulate my location. So it helps out when we have stolen devices. Commonly, public safety will call me if an iPad gets stolen. I don't know why Car Health always has some equipment stolen out of it, but if something gets stolen, they're not usually able to tell me the information I need, but they can tell me the person's name. Okay, and from there I can look up their third-party ID, and from there I can look in our logs to see what their MAC address is because of the DHCP information. It passes all that information, and from there I can just enter in. I can either enter in their MAC address up here or their name, and then I can trace where that device has been. I think of a couple of years ago, there was a stolen iPad in Hart College, and public safety contacted me, and they said they believed that it was someone in the dorm that stole it. And so I was able to get the MAC address from Bradford. I looked it up, and also with this tool, was able to tell them what room it was in. and they didn't have a search warrant. And so the only thing they could do was they went in there and asked them if they could search, and they couldn't really do much. So they weren't able to locate it. But when I left, I continued to monitor it, and what I saw was I saw the device going down the elevator and leave out the front door. The cop called me later and said that the person that they suspected did it, they were at the front desk, and they saw the person leave the building. So that person had stolen the iPad, and when they knew the public safety was on to them, they left the building. But this tool is pretty powerful because all of our controllers, and I'll get into that a little bit later, explaining the controllers and the access points connect to this, and this is a centralized place to where I can see all the activity on campus. Before we go any further, are there any questions? Eventually,
what we've covered today, we've been assuming single AP per SSID. We've talked about the fact that there are ways to do multiple SSIDs per radio. We've mentioned the fact that there's controllers, but you might want to do a 30-second overview of what you mean when you say controller.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, basically, when I say controller, there's two, in enterprise level wireless, there's two main designs that you have. You have what they call lightweight technology and autonomous. And the best way to explain this is two totally different designs. When I say lightweight, what I mean is the iOS version. Is everyone familiar with iOS on Cisco switches? Have y'all had 241? Okay. The access points have a similar build to the iOS that is on switches. The autonomous, or what I call heavyweights, they have a full iOS version to where you can configure everything from the access point. You can configure, your SSIDs, that sort of thing. But however, the lightweights, and it's the technology that we use today on campus, the access points have a very slim iOS version that you can't really do much. You can put the IP address in the controller that you connect to, but all the configuration happens at the controller. The autonomous solution, the APs are considered edge devices. You can have layer 7 firewalls and layer 7 visibility into the traffic at the access point, where on the controller, on the lightweight solution, everything is brought back through a VLAN, a management VLAN, to the controller. And that's one of the things that we logged on to. Is there anything in particular you wanted me to cover with regards to the controller?
No, just that it's that it moves most of the configuration back to the center instead of having a separate AP that's smart for every SSI.
Some people call these, the lightweight solution, dumb APs, because the APs don't do anything other than what the controller tells them to do. And so all the traffic, all the management traffic, and all the client traffic is routed back to the controller, and the controller does all the processing. Now there's some problems with that. Anybody know what the problem could be? If all the traffic, if every AP on campus, AP in Waterfield, AP in Sparks Hall, all this traffic is routed back to the controller, what could a potential problem be?
It probably uses a lot of processing, you might bottleneck.
Well,
if the controller goes down, the algorithm.
there you go. Single point of failure. But what you said is true as well. The 5508 controller, they've since come out with another controller that's a little bit beefier than this, but this can handle 8 gigs of throughput, and it's a beast. You can see the CPU usage is at 7% right now. This particular controller supports up to 500 access points, And we have around, let's see, how many APs do we have on this one right now? 377 connected to it right now. But on this controller, currently we have 1,560 students on MSU Student, 563 employees on MSU Employees, 181 people on MSU Guest, which I hate, and 86 people on MSU X. But as you were saying, it's a central point of failure. If the controller goes down because it's in band, your whole wireless goes down. Now, they have since, come up with some solutions to help with that, which I'll get into in a minute. But the old Relsey solution, it was very outdated, and that's why they moved away from it. But now I'm seeing some more companies come back to this type of solution where the APs are at the edge.
What's the cost comparison between the old APs and the new APs?
The APs are you talking about the models?
Yeah, the lightweight AP versus the heavy AP.
They're the same cost.
The same cost?
Same cost. Where you see cost savings is the old solution was a little bit cheaper because you could get away with just having one controller because since it was out of band, it didn't matter if it went down. These puppies are expensive. We have 3 5508 controllers. I have a Wisdom 2, which is are any of y'all familiar with the Cisco chassis? We'll have to take you guys to the server room one time. It has a modular blade that plugs into a Cisco chassis, a Wisdom 2, and I actually brought one of my small controllers. This is a Cisco controller. It's like the 5508, but miniature. The 5508 is about this long and about this wide. And what I got this for, since we're doing the Paducah building, we're redoing the whole design of our remote campuses. We have Henderson, Hopkinsville, Madisonville, and Paducah, and we're routing all the internet traffic back to Paducah. But I thought it was pointless for me to put all the AP traffic pointed back to campus. So what I did is we bought a smaller controller to put at Paducah, and this controller supports 50 access points, and it's pretty neat. But the stuff is pretty expensive. So like I said, we have 3 5508 controllers, 1 Wisdom 2, and we have 2 of those. The one that we're looking at now that supports 500 access points, it probably costs $60,000. We have another one that's a 5508 that supports 250 access points. It probably costs $30,000. The Wisdom 2 supports 300 access points. It probably costs $30,000. And one of the ways I was talking about how we can keep from this being a single point of failure is they have since come out with an HA solution, a high availability failover solution. And those don't cost near as much, but it's a 1-to-1. So I bought an HA controller for this controller. You connect them to each other via Ethernet cable, and it has a heartbeat, and it can detect if one of them goes down. And just an HA controller cost me $10,000, it costs about $15,000. Yes, you had a question?
Go ahead. I'll catch up with you in a minute.
Okay. Are there any questions?
We've got about 20 minutes. Let me get you wood. How do you look at central campus, remote campuses, and all that? Just looking at how am I going to cover the people I need to do, and how do I cover the area? And kind of go through this process.
Well, I get all the maps from FM. They give me all the maps, and sometimes I'll ask the people, are there any auditoriums, are there any places you anticipate classrooms are going to be more busy? And reason being is because we need to put beefier access points. And I brought up some of the access points. Most of the access points you'll see around campus is this model, the 1600 series. It's a cheaper model, and I have a slide that tells the difference between these. The 1600 series supports 128 clients. And you'll see this at most places around campus. But let's say, for instance, the best example I can think of is the large and small ballroom in the Curry Center. When they have events in there, there's quite a few people in there. And so what we'll do is we'll deploy a higher-end model, like a 3600, which you can see up there too. It's a beefier model. It supports up to 200 access points. It's much heavier. That's made out of plastic. This isn't. And also, if you look at the bottom, this has a modular expansion for 802.11ac. Each one of those, the 1600, the 2600, and 3600, they both have internal antenna models, and they have external antenna models, which I brought one of those as well. And so it's all about the coverage that you need and the capacity. Waterfield was a very difficult building to design for because they have so many, especially during finals week, they have so many people, so many unique clients, and then everybody has the laptop and their phone there and supporting those. The dorms are also very hard to design for. For example, college courts. Any of y'all ever been in college courts? They're older style buildings. They have concrete walls and possibly lead paint. And there's 12 apartment blocks and 12 buildings per block. And so what I did temporarily to get them wireless, I put some of the old 1131 series access points in there. Just to get, it doesn't do a very good job because we don't get good penetration. So I'm going to deploy, it's a different solution. It's not a Cisco solution, but it's called an Arrowhive BR100 router in each one. And this thing, these are cheap. Where the 1600 series list price is about $600, we spent about $400 for them. The 2600's list price is about $900, and the 3600 is about $1,500. Oh, I got the prices down there. $695 for the 1600, $1095 for the 2600, and $1,495 for the 3600. We don't spend that. We're on a state contract, so we get a discount from that. But these things are $100 a piece. It's a BR100 is what they call it. It's an Arrowhive solution. And Arrowhive actually uses this old autonomous solution to where everything's at the edge. And it's actually cloud-based. The controller, they had the controller at their corporation or whatever, and I can log in, create a configuration, and push it down to these things. This thing is very light.
What makes college courts difficult? Concrete for one.
Concrete, whatever kind of paint they use.
Okay, so basically you just can't get.
I can't get the penetration.
A lot of signal.
Right.
To get any through.
Right.
Are there coverage issues with that many people located, or do you just put?
Not as far as capacity about the amount of users, but coverage is the real problem. In the other dorms, coverage isn't that bad. It's the capacity, and people live in the dorms, so they require wireless for a living. Whereas on campus, you go to class, you leave class. There's what, 3 classes in here a day possibly. They live in the dorms, so they require wireless. And so I get a lot of calls and a lot of work orders from the dorms. You two know about that.
Let me ask a comparison question, just to put it in.
Okay.
In the dorms, how much wireless is there versus wired?
And a couple of years ago, actually about a year and a half ago, I was messing with the wired guys and telling them that no one uses the wired. With the exception of the gaming devices, if you take the gaming devices out, I would say 90% of the traffic in ResNet is wireless versus wired. And it's quite a bit of traffic.
So that's homework, email,
Facebook, Netflix. Netflix and YouTube are probably the top 2 bandwidth hogs we have on campus. And then when Apple releases an update, that stuff. One of my challenges is DHCP lease times. When it comes to a wired environment, you want to have a long enough lease time to where if your DHCP server goes down, you don't have to worry about your clients complaining about not being able to get a DHCP lease. But on the wireless, it's much different because you have clients coming in and out, and you have to weigh that. And it was very difficult to measure the amount of time that clients needed a lease versus the amount of leases I actually have. And so I I did some research and saw what some other people were doing, and a lot of universities are happen to go to aggressive DHCP lease times. And so I do 30 minutes on the campus side. So, and the reason I do that is because we have so many clients, and they're here, they're on, and then they off. You know, I think of the Career Center when they have different high schools come up and stuff. How all those kids now, high school kids, have cell phones. So they're taking DHCP leases, but they're only on for 15, 20 minutes, and then they're off. I don't want that lease. On the wire side, we have it for 7 days. I don't want that lease on there for that long. We run out of DHCP leases. So I decided to go on the aggressive side, and it's very rarely that our DHCP server goes down anyways, and handle it that way. And most Apple devices, you know, even if you haven't connected to it, it will automatically connect to an open SSID. So that's taking a DHCP lease. And so that's one obstacle that I've had. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you use both 2.4 gig and 5 gig, or mostly 2.4?
Okay, that's a good question.
I tried.
The 1131s and the 1242s, the old models, they were 2.4 and 5 simultaneous dual band, and but they, however, were not 802.11n. So it was actually a blessing that they did EOL those, so I could get the funding to upgrade the APs on campus to N. And then all the new ones that we deploy are N. They are 2.4 and 5 gigahertz as well. And
do you plan that one-for-one, like when you plan the coverage area for an AP? Do you assume that both of those bands?
it's been a shift because it's just now in the iPhone 5, they finally started putting a 5 gigahertz radio on there. Samsung's been doing it for about 4 years. When we first started deploying the new models, we didn't. But since I designed for 802.11an, 5 gigahertz doesn't have the range that 2.4 has. Where right now we have quite a few more users on the 2.4 side. In about 2 years, you'll really start to see that split between the 2.4 and the 5. So that's why I decided to make that shift in design for 5 gigahertz and then scale down the BG.
So for your channel planning, you plan for 1, 6, and 11.
Right.
Now.
Yes, that's a good question. On the channel, you have to plan for 1, 6, and 11 because y'all have already covered that, right? The non-overlapping channels on the 2.4. So you have to plan for as far as the channel, and that's the good thing about these. You can turn those things way down, and that's what I have to do, especially in Waterfield and the Career Center and some of the places like that, to where they're not. Elizabeth Hall, when they redesigned that building a couple of years ago, I had to put the amount of, I wanted to put the amount of APs I did because of the capacity and the amount of people that are using it. But at first, I had them up. And I had them down, but I didn't have them down enough. So I was having contention on the channels. And so I had to keep turning it down, especially the BG. With on the 5 gigahertz side, you know, you have more channels to play with, so you don't have the same issues.
Would you mind pulling up your heat map that you had on Waterfield?
Yes.
What I ask you to pull up is a graphic representation of the kind of stuff we've been talking about in these problems. What do you do with coverage? And you control coverage. Actually, I'm going to move up by you so the microphone. What I asked him to pull up was a graphic representation of coverage. You know, he's been talking about controlling power on the APs, and what this does is graphically show the reach, if you will, the coverage area for each AP. And of course, the controls you have on that are antenna choice, which is kind of a once and done. You know, once you mount the AP and put whatever antenna you're going to mount on it, that choice is made. Then the only other control you have on coverage is how much power you put through that antenna. You know, you shape the pattern with the antenna choice, and to a certain extent, you've set signal level depending on the amount of gain you put in that antenna. Now, how much power do you put behind that in this area? And what he's talking about turning it down is turning the power level down, which, of course, shrinks the coverage area. So, and I walk that way so they can hear that. So.
One of the things that, let's see.
What was your challenge for Stewart Stadium?
Stewart Stadium?
Yeah, maybe a while still there.
Stewart Stadium, down below or up top?
Down below.
I really didn't have any challenges in Stewart Stadium. They told me the areas, and this was just December of last year, I guess, that it was one of the few places on campus that didn't have wireless. And they told me the areas they wanted covered, and just so happened the APs that we put out will cover everything. So it wasn't much of a challenge. Now, as far as the stadium part, we have wireless there, but it's not adequate enough to support the amount of people that come to the football games or like Relay for Life because they don't want to pay for it. Another challenge is CFSB Center. And because we were having so many issues, I gave them the cost. A couple of years ago, it was going to be $50,000 to put the wireless, to make the wireless the way it should be to support the amount of clients that they had in CFSB Center, and they didn't want to pay it. I can understand that. But what we had to do is we had to disable the guest network in there and some of the other networks, so the mission critical networks would still work.
What would be the problem with the CFSB Center? Guys?
Concentration of users.
Yeah. I mean, what does that place see?
10,000.
10,000 people in what? 400 feet by 400 feet?
And it's all open.
Yeah. And it's tiered up and down, so it's a very tough environment.
Yeah.
Also, like, since I know in class we haven't really went over this yet, but you were talking about how APs you also need to take into consideration that they go up and down. Like, how do you use that in your design? Like, I guess for like the dorms, for like Elizabeth, since you have multiple floors, you get floor penetration, but not as much as you would think in the dorm because I put the access points in the hallway. And so at first, it took a while for me to really realize this. My design has to be for the room, okay? And so you'll get bleed over in the hallways from the second floor to the third floor, but not in the rooms from the second floor to the third floor.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You will, but not enough to matter.
Enough to count on.
Right.
So, do you still worry about if you have, and I say this because this is the problem we're going to discuss through on Monday, if you have 1, 2, and 3 floors, do you worry about if you have to put, if you're doing 6, 1, and 11, would you do that? Would you do 6, 1, and 11, or would you stagger the pattern floor to floor?
I still will stagger it. The best example of this is Regents and White, where they're just tall buildings. Yeah. And you have long hallways.
For the online class, Regents and White are, 8, 9 floors?
Mm-hmm.
They're tall dorms, probably, 40 rooms per floor, 20 rooms per floor?
Yeah, about 20-something rooms per floor.
20-something rooms per floor, so 50 users per floor.
Mm-hmm. And so what I'll do on one of those is, so you have, like, let's say this is an elevator. This is a floor and this is a floor. Typically what I do is on this end of the hall, I have 2 access points. On this end of the hall, in the middle, I have 1. And then the next floor, I'll do like that.
Ah, okay. And then how do you do channels?
Actually, I don't mess with the channels that much. I let the controller do it. But typically, it'll do like 1, 6, 11, 6, 1, 11.
And by explanation, when he said let the controller take care of it, you remember when we were looking at some of the specs, you ran across DFS? DFS is actually designed for something else. It avoids interference. But the controllers can look and see what's active nearby and choose a channel. And so what you're saying is you just let the controllers do it.
Right.
But typically it'll offset them the way we looked at them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I did want to bring something up while we still had a little time. The thing that I like the most about the lightweight solution versus the autonomous is the easeability for me to deploy new SSIDs. Okay, the way we do it is we have what we call AP groups. So we have AP groups for different places around campus. Like, I don't really want to get into VTP domains, but we geographically group areas together. So let's say this is the IT area. So the surrounding buildings, I will create one AP group, and all the APs in this surrounding area will be in this AP group. It also helps with transitioning from AP to AP as you're walking down the hall. Okay.
Essentially a layer 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, so faculty hall would be another one. General services and business. Okay, and so when I deploy access points, they ask me what AP group name to put it in. And so I will put it in one of these AP groups, depending on what building it's by. But let's say, for instance, in CFSB Center, it's closest to general services, but they have special requirements like Ticketmaster. They have their wireless scanners. And so if I wanted to deploy an SSID just for that, it's very easy. All I'll do is create a new AP group LAN, and I'll call it, for instance, General Services dash Ticketmaster. It'll have the same VLANs as this for the SSIDs we have, MSU student, employee, guest. But it'll also, in this AP group, I'll put a FAN TM, which is the SSID they use. This was very hard to have customized designs like that with the old solution. But now I can deploy a new SSID in 5 minutes. Put my design. I want it to be, WPA2. I want it to be on this individual access point. Create a new group, and then stick that access point in that group, and it'll have all the SSIDs that I want.
So we've touched on this, but what's going on in that case? We'll get there in about another week. But what's going on is we've divorced the SSID or that BSS from the physical AP. The AP is now simply put a radio, and its identity over the air depends on what you tell the controller to do. So I can have more than one BSS do a single physical radio. And we haven't quite talked through that yet in here.
And all of these networks that you see on campus are different VLANs. Okay, so we have MSU students, MSU employee, MSU guest. These are the three main SSIDs you see on campus. But in each of these AP groups, these are different VLANs. So MSU student, MSU employee, and MSU guest, let's say that's VLAN 1, 2, and 3 there. In fact, hall, 4, 5, and 6. Gen Serve, 7, 8, and 9. And the only reason I do that, I do it for the IP address schema, because I can have different VLANs have different DHCP addresses, and by the third octet of the IP address, I know where they're at. So if third octet is like a 150 address, oh okay, they're over near Waterfield, that sort of thing. Did you have something?
No, it's really close.
Okay. Are there any questions? I know there's probably a lot of stuff thrown at you. You have a question? Okay. You guys can contact me.
Convince you to come back?
Yeah.
In maybe a week or two? Maybe right after Christmas? Okay. Right after Christmas, right after Thanksgiving? Okay.
And if you guys have any questions, you can contact me. Give it John Hart, and we'll, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Man, appreciate it a lot. See you guys Monday. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Yeah, this helped a lot. This got right at what we've been dealing with.